Tôi sinh ra và lớn lên ở miền Nam Việt Nam, nơi có dòng Mekong chảy ngang. Con sông Mekong được xem là mạch sống, trái tim và linh hồn của vùng đất Đông Nam Á. Dòng sông này cũng là hệ thống giao thông thủy huyết mạch, là nguồn cung cấp cá và nhiều sản vật khác cho cư dân hai bên bờ. Trong tôi có dòng Mekong đang chảy. Và rồi giờ đây, một cô gái Việt Nam đang sinh sống và học tập tại nước Úc. Tôi như cảm thấy có thêm một con sông nữa chảy bên mình, dòng chảy của sông Murray xinh đẹp.
My name is Kevin Krapinuri. I'm a Ngarrindjeri man from this area, and Ngarrindjeri is our tribe, our people from here. We've been mixed up with this river for thousands of years, my people. And I can remember this one just about 1954, 55 through to now. So it gives you a fair span, I suppose. Before 1956, you could read a Coke bottle on the bottom of the river out here. It was that clear, it was beautiful water. And after the 56 floods, it never ever got clear again. Whether it was from all the silt that come down from upstream, I don't know, but I think it was bad management actually by the governments, because they did not do anything towards it. But the river itself was it was an existence for our people here, and it still is today for, well, pretty much the whole countryside, because it's the water source for South Australia, really. There's a story about how the river came to be. It would take too long to tell it, believe me, because it started way up in where our mob started using it, and it all come down to Ngurunderi, who was like our, not God, but spiritual. And the Murray cod, which in our language is Pondi, they chased him from way up where it all started, and they tried to spear him. And they kept throwing. Sometimes they hit him and make him go a bit quicker, and his tail would slash, and that would open the width of the river a bit. And then down here, that's Long Island. And that's where one spear missed. And it hit the water, and that became Long Island. That's in our mythology. And they chased him all the way down to the lake to where they didn't catch him all the way down there. But when they got down into the lake, they sent a message across telling Ngurunderi's brother-in-law to watch out for this big fish coming across. And they caught him and killed him. And then they sat down and they cut it into pieces. And every piece they cut, they threw it back in the water, and they named all the fish from the one. And that's how the different species became in the river. That's according to our legends.
I'm Ken Wells, who I was born and bred in Murray Bridge as a third generation market gardener orchardist and vegetable seed production 2 kilometres downstream from Murray Bridge. So I've been involved through the family, associated with the river since 1934-35, and we've experienced many ups and downs of the river, being floods and low rivers. With our market garden on the river, we found that after the 1930s, mid-1930s, when they put the locks in the river down at Goolwa, at the end of the river, at the mouth, it rose the river up considerably for irrigation. Before that, we depended on the river to keep flowing, and if it got drought years, the river dropped. But now when they put the barrages in, it controlled the level of the river, so we people who were irrigating had sufficient water to irrigate. The irrigation system right along the length of the river is very important. If we took the river out of South Australia, we would not have any fresh fruit and vegetables and things like that. So it is one of the main areas of our state. We had to have the flow of the river through to the mouth to keep a healthy river. If there was talk of putting another lock at the end of the river prior to going into the lakes, that would stop the flow of the river. If you haven't got a flowing river, you've got a dead river.
River level is kept at what we call pool level, so even through the middle of summer when it doesn't rain, we've still got water. The water level is still there that we can still flood irrigate. If the level in the river drops too much, then we can't flood irrigate, we can't siphon over the bank. Once the water level gets down to the same level as what the pasture is on this side of the river, we can't flood irrigate, and then we've got to use the pump, which in turn creates a lot more cost for us to run the system. Well, the river is extremely important to our way of life. If we didn't have the river here to irrigate, our annual rainfall is about 11 or 12 inches, which is, in this type of soil, we're on very heavy black clay type soil, and the rainfall isn't enough to grow the type of pasture we need for the dairy cows. So we totally rely on the irrigation for probably 7-8 months of the year to grow our feed.
I'm Dr. Juliette Woods. I'm with the Flinders University of South Australia. The main problems we have with the River Murray relate to the river level. Over time we've changed that by adding locks to the system, and we've extracted large amounts of water for irrigation. So the river has evolved to expect regular floods, very large changes in river level, and it doesn't see that anymore. Instead, we have a very narrow range. The healthy floodplain requires regular floods, but now they are infrequent and they are much smaller than they used to be. Another one is salinity, where irrigation has moved some of the very saline water underground, naturally saline water, and pushed it into the River Murray. Rainfall includes a tiny amount of salt, but in these dry, semi-arid regions, the water almost entirely evaporates and concentrates the salt in the water below ground. So that's why, naturally speaking, much of the water underground is extremely saline. It can be greater than seawater. And then on top of that, you have the freshwater river flowing on top. So whenever you have some of that underground water mixing with the river water, that's why you have a large salinity problem. There are a few other places in the world where that's true, but the River Murray is pretty unusual in that way. Well, I think the public already is actually pretty aware of many of the problems of the River Murray, particularly during the drought. It was highly publicised, in both local newspapers and nationally. But the government's also been working for decades now with the local irrigators, with the local people, and also organisations like the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, state government and SA Water produce regular updates online and on paper just to let people know what's happening with health of the river system.
Lưu vực sông Mekong là nơi tập trung của hệ sinh thái quan trọng, là tuyến giao thông chính của cư dân 6 nước trong vùng mà sông này chảy qua, trong đó có Việt Nam. Nguồn nước nơi đây hiện đang đối mặt với không ít thách thức bởi sự ô nhiễm do khai thác quá mức hay do tốc độ phát triển, đặc biệt là những thách thức do hệ thống thủy điện từ Lào và Trung Quốc. Lượng cá vùng hạ nguồn đã bắt đầu sụt giảm đáng kể. Cùng với đó là sự ít đi của lượng phù sa bồi đắp cho các cánh đồng và mùa vụ. Trong trái tim tôi luôn in đậm dáng hình của những dòng sông ở cả hai đất nước, Úc và Việt Nam. Tôi muốn làm những gì có thể để góp phần giữ gìn, bảo vệ những dòng sông này trước mọi sự xâm phạm thô bạo của thiên nhiên.
Well, it makes me feel nice to feel like to help the turtles, to make them make more and more of them come back again.
Water for the Murray River stopped flowing and salt water came up the river. One of our employees, whose father is a fisherman, found 2 turtles covered in tube worm, and tube worm is the cast of a parasite that lives in salty water. We brought them into school, the children cleaned them up, and from that began a whole project. The message that we have, that we get our children to understand, is that when decisions are made, that the first amount of water that comes down the river must be for the environment. After that, the allocation for agriculture can happen, but our first allocation has to be for the environment, so that this disaster that happened, that it was the very first time in the world that this had happened. There was no documentation, it had never been recorded before, and we actually helped make up procedures on how to deal with it. And now that there is paperwork and procedures, hopefully they'll never have to be used again.